Have you ever wondered who really lives on the other side of the wall? That friendly neighbor, the quiet guy downstairs, the always smiling couple? What if none of it is what it seems? This isn't just a collection of bizarre stories. It's a deep dive into the dark side of everyday coexistence. Real and disturbing tales that shatter everything you believe about safety, sanity, and the silence between rooms. We live surrounded by walls, locks, and social rules. But what happens when those boundaries are just fragile illusions? When trust is a trap, you'll meet people who ignored small signs until they discovered the danger wasn't outside, but next door. What seemed like exaggeration or paranoia was just the beginning of something bigger, darker, and unforgettable. Get ready for stories of control, surveillance, manipulation, and insanity. Here, the monster doesn't roar, it whispers, it watches, and by the time you realize it's there, it's already too late. Because in real horror, the scariest thing isn't the scream, but the silence before it. And maybe it's listening now? Think you know your neighbors? After these stories, that certainty will vanish, because behind seemingly normal doors live secrets that defy logic and touch directly on what we try hardest to hide, our own fear. Keep watching until the end, because only then will you understand what these stories have in common. And maybe realize that some knocks at your door aren't as harmless as they seem. I should have noticed it earlier. There was something too strange about all that politeness. The visits with cake, the coffee invitations, always at the most unexpected times. At first, I thought she was just a lonely old woman trying to be kind to the new neighbor. She lived on the same floor, in an old, quiet building with narrow hallways that echoed even whispers. Always in beige clothes, always with that glazed look. And I foolishly accepted the tea, accepted the talk, accepted letting her in. The third time she came by, it was different. She brought nothing, just stood there, hands empty, eyes fixed on the door. She knocked 3 times, always with the same rhythm. When I opened it, she was already smiling. She asked if I'd heard the noise too. I said no. She replied, then it was just me, again, and walked in like the place belonged to her. That's when I realized she knew where everything was. Elsewhere in the city, a guy shared an apartment with a college roommate. The new neighbor seemed too perfect. Polite, helpful, always smiling, like someone out of an insurance commercial. Trust came quickly, and with it, carelessness. Then things started disappearing: socks, cutlery, headphones. Then came the noises at night, and when he installed a camera, he saw it. The neighbor entered his room while he slept, stroked the pillow, and left. A newly graduated woman moved to a cheaper neighborhood. Her neighbor was the typical good guy. Weekend barbecues, small talk in the elevator, light jokes. One day, she found a gift at her door, an old bracelet she'd lost months ago inside her bedroom. She didn't tell anyone, just locked everything and started sleeping with the lights on. But sometimes she'd wake up to find them off. That's what no one thinks about, how the ordinary can be the most dangerous. People with perfect routines, easy smiles, a cup of tea at just the right time. Evil, when disguised as kindness, approaches slowly, and when you realize it, it's already inside, sitting on your couch, watching. That night, I woke to the sound of the kettle. I went to the kitchen. She was there, stirring sugar in my mug like it was routine, looking out the window like it was her home. I froze, tried to scream, but my throat locked. The silence was the worst part. It wasn't an open threat. It was the certainty that she had never really left. The guy with the camera moved, but never slept well again. Installed locks on 3 separate doors. The sound of turning the key became a ritual, and paranoia, a constant companion. He said the neighbor knew too much, even knew the kind of nightmares he had, and that, he said, no one could possibly know. The woman with the bracelet decided to confront him. He laughed, said he'd been watching her for a long time, said he knew her schedules, her fears, the details, that it was love, that it was normal. And she realized the real terror wasn't him. It was how easily people accepted that behavior as love, as attention. I never saw the old woman again. They said she was institutionalized, said she was sick, but no one explained how she had keys to the entire floor, or the notebook she carried, filled with detailed notes about every resident, handwritten in firm lettering, like someone who'd never had vision problems. Trust became a trigger. Kindness, a warning. The new neighbor always starts with a cheerful hello, with a timid smile, with an offer to help. And that's enough. enough to open the door, to lower your guard, and when danger comes, it's already sitting in the corner of the room. The monster never wears a mask, it wears perfume, a blazer, asks how your day was, and watches. Always watches, waiting for the right moment to step in. And when it does, there's no noise, just the space you gave away thinking it was just someone trying to be nice. I still hear footsteps in the hallway, always at 3:17 a.m. Sometimes I think it's just imagination. Other times, I'm sure it's her, because that night, deep down, I never closed the door. And I clearly remember what she whispered before vanishing. We're still going to have that tea. I first saw her late at night, soaked from the rain, trembling. The social worker didn't seem comfortable leaving her there, but signed the papers quickly. The woman didn't speak a word. She just looked around with eyes too wide, like everything felt hostile and unfamiliar. They placed her in a room at the back of the shelter, away from everyone else. She didn't come down for dinner, and no one wanted to force it. By then, ignoring was easier than understanding. In the days that followed, strange noises echoed through the building. The coordinator said it was just old pipes, but the moans at night didn't come from plumbing. They came from the end of the hallway, from the newcomer's room. Some began avoiding her. Others watched through cracks in her door. One night, a volunteer went inside and found drawings on the walls, words spiraling over and over. They left me here. They left me here. Hugo met a girl during spring semester. She had a nervous laugh and an anxious look that never left her face. At first, she just seemed sensitive and tense. He liked that. They started dating, and soon she had copies of his apartment keys, said it was to surprise him, said it was love. Then came the episodes. Jealousy attacks, long silences, 3 a.m. texts asking who he was with, even though he was clearly asleep. Once, he woke up to find her standing in the middle of the room, staring at the wall. She was murmuring something. When he asked what it was, she said, "Just trying to hear if they're still there." Then she disappeared for days, came back calmer, until he noticed cameras behind the picture frames. She said it was for safety, that it was necessary, but the feeling of being watched became unbearable. In the basement of an old house, a man swore he heard machines running. It was the neighbor's cellar. From the outside, it looked abandoned, but lights flickered and metallic sounds echoed constantly. One day, he couldn't resist and went in. What he found was a group of older men operating machines he couldn't identify. Chemical smells, chairs with straps, papers with names and schedules. When he came back with police, the basement was empty. The woman at the shelter vanished. The staff claimed she ran away, but the notes left behind said something else. "I'm being listened to. They're testing me. The food is poisoned." No one investigated. No one wanted to know. After all, she had mental disorders. Easier to call it madness than consider something darker. And the shelter kept running like nothing happened. Hugo tried to break up. He was stabbed in the shoulder. She cried while helping him, saying it was his fault, that he made her lose control. The police treated it as an isolated case. She was committed for a short time, released, disappeared. And Hugo lived in fear of mirrors, of open windows, of soft voices down the hallway. He never trusted anyone again. The basement was renovated, the house sold, but new residents still report strange noises at night. The former owner was never found. Some say he was a doctor, others part of a cult. Nothing confirmed. Just pieces of equipment under tarps and a constant feeling that, even empty, the basement never stopped operating. At the shelter, a new resident arrived. Young, quiet, with a strange scar on her arm. The coordinator didn't know her full name or where she came from, just had one instruction: avoid prolonged contact. On the first day, she wrote a single sentence on the bathroom mirror with red lipstick. "You'll hear them too." In every story, neglect of mental health was the fuse. Not the illness itself, but abandonment. The refusal to treat, to listen, to protect. The signs were there, in the walls, the eyes, the silence. But it was easier to pretend it was exaggeration. Drama, the invention of minds too broken to deserve attention. The greatest horror wasn't in the breakdowns, it was in what hides behind them. In the network that profits from silence, in those who feed madness for control, and in a system that keeps its eyes shut. Because admitting something is wrong means acting, and the fear of acting is always greater than the fear of losing your mind. The girl with the scar was last seen in the second floor hallway. Motion sensors caught her shadow at 3:13 a.m., and for some reason, the bathroom mirror cracked at that same moment. Since then, no one dares to use the back room. Though they say it's empty, everyone avoids passing by it with the lights off. Garrett moved into the student co-op at the start of the spring semester. The place was old but cheap, with that damp wood smell and walls that creaked with the wind. He shared the space with other college students, all easygoing, except her, the old woman in room 6. They said she was a relative of the manager there temporarily, but no one really knew. And she never came out during the day. At first, Garrett tried to be polite, greeted her in the hallway. Once, he held the door open for her, and she walked through without saying a word. Her gaze was always the same, fixed, hollow, like she was looking at something beyond. Late at night, he started hearing shuffling footsteps in the hallway, and once he swore he saw her shadow standing outside his door. But when he opened it, the hallway was empty. By the third week, things were out of place, his books disturbed, the bed sheets rumpled like someone had laid there, the closet slightly open. He thought it was in his head, or maybe a prank by another student, until he found a teacup still hot sitting on his desk. He had just gotten home from class. No one else had a key. He told the manager, who brushed it off, said she had some odd habits, but was harmless. Asked for patience. Garrett tried to keep up with his routine, but then the nightmares began. He was locked in his room, and someone whispered his name from the other side of the door. Always at 3:17 a.m., always the same voice. "Garrett, may I come in?" One day, he forgot his phone and went back to his room. The door was slightly open. When he entered, he saw the old woman crouched, rummaging through his backpack. She slowly turned and just smiled, then walked out without a word. He told no one. Just changed the lock and started pushing the dresser against the door at night. Things got worse. A girl knocked on his door, terrified, saying she'd seen the old woman crawling through the hallway late at night. Her face was bruised. She muttered nonsense like, "He's still down there," or "It wasn't meant for me." Then she'd vanish for days. When she returned, she seemed lucid again. But her gaze, that never changed. Garrett decided to investigate. Went to her room. Knocked. No answer. Tried the knob. It was unlocked. The room was empty, but the walls were covered in aluminum foil, jars of old pills, and stacks of notebooks filled with scribbled notes about voices, noises, times, and symbols. Under the bed, a knife, and a photo of him sleeping. He called the manager. When they returned, the door was locked, as if it had never been opened. The manager said, "Garrett, room 6 has been empty since January. She was taken to a hospital." But he knew what he'd seen. Knew she kept leaving hot tea in his room. Knew it wasn't his imagination. Paranoia took over. Garrett began sleeping with headphones, lights on, eyes wide, avoided everyone, eventually left the co-op. He never again shared space with strangers. Every hallway reminded him of that presence, the silence, the feeling of being watched. Even at home, he swore he still heard the footsteps at night. Later, he found an online forum post about the building. Other students shared similar experiences. Whispers, voices, hot tea, 317 nightmares. One wrote, "She wasn't old, just looked that way." Another claimed there was a hidden passage in the basement, but the posts were deleted soon after. The last thing Garrett saw before deleting his account was an anonymous image. It showed him sleeping, lying on his side. In the background, in the mirror, the reflection of the old woman standing behind the bed, with the same smile as before. Since then, he's taped over his bedroom mirror and sleeps with a knife under his pillow, just in case. Maybe she never left, maybe she never existed, but every time he hears a creak in the night, his body goes rigid, and in his mind the whisper still echoes, "Garrett, may I come in?" Quinn was the quiet type of neighbor, worked a lot, polite, rarely made any noise. He had lived with his girlfriend for almost 2 years, but everyone knew the relationship was unstable. Occasional shouting, slamming doors, long silences. Still, when she moved in permanently, no one questioned it. They just assumed they had reconciled, but she never left again. Then came the signs. Quinn installed security cameras in the hallway. The balcony plants were replaced with poisonous kinds. Foxglove, angel's trumpet. He started going out less and less. His coworkers said he arrived late, seemed distracted, like he hadn't slept. Her obsession wasn't visible from the outside, but it lived in every detail of his routine. She copied his passwords, read his emails, knew who he talked to and what about. When he tried to confront her, she cried for hours, saying he was abandoning her. The next day, photos of him were scattered around the living room with handwritten notes. "You are mine. No one will love you like I do. Don't even think of leaving." He tried to ignore it, tried to understand, but fear had already moved in with him. One night, he woke up to find her sitting at the edge of the bed, just watching. She didn't blink, didn't move. A knife rested on her lap. When he asked what she was doing, she said, "Just taking care of what's mine." That was the day he started planning his escape. Packed a hidden bag in the closet, slept with his shoes on, he scheduled a short trip with a friend, told her nothing, left everything ready. But when he woke up, the bag was empty. His friend had received a message from canceling the trip. Quinn never sent it. The security footage had been erased that night. The only remaining image was of her, standing at the door, staring directly into the lens. The end was inevitable. He tried to leave while she was asleep, but the door was locked from the inside. She woke up, said she knew, said she always knew what he was going to do, said she loved him too much to let him go. When the police arrived, they found Quinn on the living room floor with a deep cut in his shoulder. She was holding him, crying. During the interrogation, she said it was all his fault, that he made her lose control, that it was like he wanted to provoke her. She was institutionalized, later released, moved to another city. Quinn moved too, spent months sleeping in different hotels, installed extra locks, avoided social media, never spoke of her to anyone. Former neighbors spoke cautiously, said she seemed normal, smiled in the elevator, offered help with groceries, but one resident revealed she once found the woman standing in the lobby, whispering Quinn's name repeatedly for nearly 20 minutes. Like she was praying, like she was summoning something. Quinn started hearing knocks at his door at 3 a.m. Always 3 knocks, always the same rhythm. No one was ever there. Until one night a letter appeared. It read, "You're still mine and I still know where you are." He moved again, left everything behind, even his name. He never dated again. Lived between cities, a different face each season. But the fear remained. He still wakes up startled, still dreams of her sitting beside the bed, knife in her lap, that soft voice saying, "Just taking care of what's mine," and the feeling that somewhere she's still watching, waiting, patiently. The new apartment seemed perfect. Quiet street, discreet neighbors, affordable rent. The only odd thing was the man downstairs, Damon. He never said good morning, rarely went out, but no one really cared. At first, he just seemed like a private guy, until the noises started. Always around 2 a.m., clicking, humming, scratching, like something mechanical was working beneath the floor. One day, the tenant in 302 got curious and started watching. He noticed Damon received a lot of packages, big, heavy boxes. No one knew what he did for a living. No social media, never answered the buzzer, never seen in daylight. The strangest part was the voices. Every night, they echoed from Damon's apartment. But as soon as someone rang the bell, everything stopped. Trying to be friendly, the neighbor knocked with a bottle of wine. Damon answered quickly, looked annoyed, said he was busy, thanked him, and closed the door. But for a second, the man from 302 saw inside. Mannequins seated at a dinner table, a TV playing footage of a party, and stacks of boxes with their labels covered in black tape. A week later, the smell began. Something acidic, metallic. The building manager said it was probably plumbing, but the smell only came from Damon's unit. On a stormy night, the power went out. In that brief darkness, the tenant heard footsteps on the emergency stairs. When the lights returned, his door was slightly ajar. No one there, just a wet footprint on the floor. Suspicion turned into obsession. He began watching Damon secretly, installed a hallway camera. In one clip, he saw men in gloves and caps silently removing boxes. In another, Damon left with a large black bag at 3:16 a.m., but the video deleted itself during transfer to his computer. One day, Damon vanished. No one saw him again. The police were called, and the apartment was finally opened. It was empty. No furniture, no personal items, just a trapdoor covered by a rug. Below, a steel staircase led to an underground basement with industrial machines, dirty uniforms, and dozens of numbered containers. But no trace of Damon. The case was buried. Local news called it illegal chemical storage. No deeper investigation, no arrest. The tenant from 302 was told not to speak about it, but he knew what he saw. He knew it wasn't about waste, and he knew Damon was still missing. After that, odd things started happening in his own apartment. The lock looked tampered with, a handprint appeared on the bathroom mirror, motion sensors activated without cause. One night, he found a note under the door, "You saw too much." Since then, he sleeps with the lights on. Other neighbors started moving out, complained of noises, the feeling of being watched, figures in the hall. The building offered rent discounts to new tenants. No one mentioned Damon. It was like he'd never existed, but everyone knew, and they avoided the ground floor apartment. One night, the man from 302 heard a sound from below. Faint, rhythmic, like a machine powering back on. Pressing his ear to the floor, he heard a metallic voice repeating, "Test number 27 initiated." Since then, he never walks barefoot inside, and he hasn't gone to bed before 4 a.m. He still lives there, says he's waiting for concrete proof. Something that justifies leaving. But every time he tries, something happens. The car won't start, boxes disappear, the lease extends on its own, as if the building won't let him go. As if Damon is still there, watching, waiting. On the last day of each month at 3:17 a.m., the front lobby light flickers 3 times. Always the same hour, always the same pattern. The security camera captures a shadow at the door, no face. And in the morning, the only difference is the smell. Metallic, acidic, impossible to ignore. You might think you locked the door, that you know who lives next door, that your home is an impenetrable sanctuary. But what if the real horror lies in the routine, in what you choose to ignore? These stories aren't just about neighbors. They're about the limits of perception, the weight of silence, and what happens when madness settles in the place where you're supposed to feel safe. How many times have you heard a strange noise and let it go? How many times have you noticed something out of place and chose to forget it? Maybe the fear isn't outside, but inside your own denial. Safety is a feeling, and feelings can deceive, especially when everything seems just a little too normal. The question that remains is simple and devastating. Who's really watching whom? If these stories got under your skin, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, share with someone who never trusts their neighbors. And remember, the next sound you hear in the middle of the night might not be just the wind.